enough to pay for it and sit through it, you enjoy it enough to do it for free. So you can go to our website and there's hours and hours and hours of us talking. You can just listen to it.
So if you don't enjoy us, just don't go to the website and you'll never have to deal with this again. Unless you come back to New York Anime Festival, you're like, oh, a panel on, like, I don't know, manga. Let's go. You walk in, oh crap, it's those guys.
Alright, so Gekiga. Before we talk about Gekiga, right, we have to give you a base knowledge of manga. You might know this stuff already, but we got to give it to you. Now, there was manga, which is comics that happen to be made in Japan, right? A long time ago, some people date it way back. But manga, as we know, it began, push the button, right? Alright, you see, when someone says God of manga, right, God of manga, you might think of something like that, right? But that's not the God of manga. No. This is the God of manga, right? Whether you know it or not, right? Everything that you like, right, all anime and all manga would not be here without this man who died in 1989, sadly.
He basically created manga as it is today, with Astro Boy, among other things. He also was the father of anime. He made the first real anime. And almost everything you see in anime today is based very heavily on things he did. Like all the tropes came from him. He is the beginning of all of this.
So, Osamu Tezuka is your god. If you have not seen his works, anime and manga, you're not an anime fan. You don't know what you're talking about, and no one's going to respect you if you try to, say anything like, "Oh, that show sucks." Well, have you seen any, Tezuka shows? Well, no. Then how do you know what you're talking about? It's like,
yes, I'm a film buff, but I've never seen Citizen Kane or The Godfather.
Oh, well then what you say doesn't count. No.
But anyway, Osamu Tezuka, he basically began this manga thing. He made Astro Boy, and he was incredibly prolific. The man drew and wrote everything himself. And the number of pages that this man put out in his life is staggering.
Yeah, the dude wrote and drew over 200,000 plus pages of manga in his life, in addition to producing all these anime and all these other things, right? When he died, on his deathbed, he was like, let me work. It's not an exaggeration, that's really his last words were like, I need to work.
It is reported that his last words were, let me work.
Yeah. So, Tezuka is where everything begins. Now, Tezuka, right, for all his greatness, in his day, the 50s and then, such, was mostly making things for kids, right? Astro Boy was targeted at kids. It was not something that adults were going to watch, right? They might have. It is sort of an all ages show. I enjoy Astro Boy, but it wasn't targeted at the adults. It was targeted at the kids, and those kids grew up, right? They grew up watching Astro Boy, and then they were like my age. They were 20-somethings, and they said, Astro Boy doesn't really do it for me anymore. But they still liked manga. They still liked anime, but there wasn't any. It was all for kids. So where would they turn to? Alright. A man named Yoshihiro Tatsumi came along. Now, in Japan, way back in those days, right, there was, the economy wasn't so great, people were pretty poor, right, and they had this lending library system. And basically, if you wanted to print something, you'd print it and give it to these lending libraries. They're all like, the public library, only not so public. And there was a lot of sort of underground books, underground manga, underground sort of stuff. And you go to the lending libraries and get it. So Yoshihiro Tatsumi made manga for lending libraries, but he made it, targeted at adults. And, the topics he covered were very much tied to, the political, social, and economic things that were going on in Japan at the time, late 60s, early 70s-ish time. And, so Tatsumi, he didn't want to call it manga, right? Because, is the next slide?
It is the next slide.
Oh, I'm so professional.
Yes, you are.
Alright, so manga, you can see here, those are the kanji characters from manga, right? And the one on the left it means whimsical, right? And the one on the right means pictures. Manga is whimsical pictures, right? It makes sense, right? In the word, they're manzai, right? I don't know, who knows what manzai is? Anybody? Okay. Manzai is basically sort of like a Abbott and Costello kind of vaudeville, two-man comedy style they do in Japan. You can go on YouTube and look for manzai, and it's basically two guys, a straight man and a funny man, and do a comedy bit. Right?
Actually, there's an anime, if any of you, you can find it on torrents, so it'll never be brought out in the US, legitimately, but it's called Gagi Manga Biori, and we can give you a reference to that later if you want to see it, but that is a good example of manzai.
Well, it's the same type of humor as Manzai, but it doesn't have the two-man action going. But so you see that the character for whimsical, right, that is used in manga is the same as the whimsical character used for Manzai. So manga, in its name, inherently, it is tied to sort of, goofy comedy routine, right? But he was like, no, I'm making comics here. It's pictures and words on a page, but this is serious business. This isn't a joke. Right? So calling it manga is sort of incorrect.
It's really the same as in America. We had this movement where suddenly comic books, graphic novels, they changed the name to try to change the perception about them, because it is different, but people have this preconceived notion. Most people out there who don't watch anime, they think cartoons, yeah, cartoons for kids. Comics, yeah, comics are for kids. And he really wanted to change that. The same way, graphic novel, it's not just for kids, it's something else.
Yeah, so he came up with the word Gekiga, which is dramatic manga. The pictures, the kanji is still there, but he changed the first kanji from whimsical to dramatic. Alright, so Yoshihiro Tatsumi came up with this idea of the dramatic pictures, and do you want to take questions during?
We'll get a question section in the middle. We'll definitely take questions at the end. And because we do a radio show, if we run out of time, we get kicked out, you guys have questions. We can totally, if you email us, we will answer you, and we talked about this a lot on our show. And we also have a lot of other experts we can pull in to answer if you guys have anything that will help us.
Alright, so Yoshihiro Tatsumi was the father of this Gekiga movement. He sort of came up with it, mostly. There were a lot of other people doing similar things to him at the time.
He was just sort of iconic. This was kind of the underground comics movement in Japan at the time. And it really dealt with a lot of things that, that were kind of, people didn't really want to talk about them, but the undercurrent was still there. There was a lot of issues with misogyny in Japan right after World War II. A lot of issues with, just the post-war situation, the American occupation, the rebuilding, all these things. And a lot of the media didn't portray it that much. Comics were still just comics for kids. And part of Tatsumi's stuff was that he really went right to the core of these issues. His comic books were very disturbing to a lot of people because they really hit way too close to home. They were really serious. They're about people losing their jobs and their wives leaving them because entering the workforce and all these sorts of sad, at the time, very poignant and important stories.
Yeah.
So you couldn't buy this stuff in the stores. You had to get them in this underground movement through the lending libraries.
Yeah, so the thing was, eventually, through his popularity in the lending libraries, eventually the economy improved a little bit, and the Gekiga was able to move out of the lending libraries. Now, when people talk about genres of work in the U.S. at least, you look at the work and you say, okay, there's a spaceship on the cover, this is sci-fi, right? In Japan, when you're talking about manga, you look at what magazine it was published in. So you say, you don't look, oh, there's a spaceship on it. You say, okay, this was published in Shonen Jump, it's a shonen. This was published in Shoujo Beat, it's a shoujo, right? So what happened was, after the lending libraries sort of faded, the Gekiga moved into two magazines, Garo and Kam, right? And Garo and Kam, it's pretty much, oh, this manga was published in Garo. It's Gekiga, it's not manga, right? Oh, Gekiga is manga, but it's not. You can argue about that all day, that's not what we're here for. Anyway, so what happened was, the Gekiga was pretty popular. It was popular enough to have, new magazines showing up, and people were buying them. And all these people who grew up on Astro Boy were reading the Gekiga. And what happened was the influence of Tatsumi and his contemporaries spread over. And you can see this is actually, wow, it looks pretty bad up there. All right.
Yeah, don't worry, the rest of the slides don't look like this.
Alright, but anyway, Tezuka, right, even was influenced by, Tatsumi and what the Gekiga people were doing. And actually, Tezuka's life work, Phoenix, was published in Kam, alright? It is, you could call it a Gekiga and get away with it. So this is actually 2 pages that I scanned from Vertical Incorporated's U.S. edition of Ode to Kirihito, which is a Tezuka book. It's one big volume. It's sort of a medical thriller, sort of. It's hard to exactly say.
The point to take away is basically that there were comics and they were generally for kids. Then there's this underground Gekiga movement, and it was definitely underground. It wasn't like you'd see it in the stores. And Tezuka, who is the god of manga, who's making the things that are in the stores, things people are buying, the things for kids, sees this, and he was friends with these people, and he worked with a lot of them, and he started incorporating a lot of this back into his works. And some of his later works, like Moon or Apollo's Song or Ode to Kirihito, you definitely see this strong Gekiga influence. They're serious, they're dark, they're not the Astro Boy stuff. And Astro Boy isn't 100% lighthearted, but you look at this compared to most people who only have a superficial understanding of Tezuka in Astro Boy, and you don't expect to see this sort of serious, scary-looking manga.
Think about this. Imagine you had Stan Lee in the U.S., right? And then along comes R. Crumb. Now imagine if R. Crumb, Stan Lee borrowed and was influenced by R. Crumb and implemented the R. Crumb type stuff in the Marvel comics. That's basically what happened here. Is Tezuka saw Tatsumi and his friends, and then he said, "Oh, I got to do me some of that," because he respected it so much, and he brought it back. Alright,
so now the thing is, Gekiga as a movement, I mean, it's kind of like, the way I would describe it is film noir, where people say things are noir-esque or noir influenced, but film noir was a very specific movement that happened in the past, and Gekiga is kind of the same way. With one possible exception, there really aren't works today that you would say, this is Gekiga. Like, this is Gekiga.
The only, because the difference between a movement and a genre, it's sort of hard to explain outside of art class, and I'm a computer scientist, so I can't really tell you either. A movement is sort of like, during this period of time, artists were sort of leaning in this direction, and they sort of all were, experimenting with similar things, and, so it was a movement in art. It wasn't a genre, which is just sort of, all these works have these things in common, they're all in this genre.
So, Gekiga, what I want to show you is this is actually a seinen manga. And when I say that, in America we have shonen and shoujo. People tend to think, well, boys manga, girls manga. But in Japan, it's much more complex than that, and we kind of lose this. And a lot of these titles in other genres or to other demographics aren't really represented. I mean, shoujo is aimed at young girls. That's what it is. It is manga that is directed or meant to be marketed to young girls. And shonen is meant to be marketed to young boys. And other people read them, but that is their primary demographic. They also have seinen and josei. Now, seinen actually comprises of two kinds of things. On one hand, there's stuff like this, like Sanctuary, or like Eagle, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which are heavily influenced by Gekiga, and which are fantastic manga. And we'll talk about why they're out of print and hard to get in the US. And then there's other things like Azumanga Daioh, you realize. People a lot of times say, oh, it's a shoujo manga. No, it was a seinen manga. It was aimed at guys our age.
It is published in a magazine. The guy who wrote Azumanga Daioh, his name is Kiyohiko Azuma, right? And it's called Azumanga Daioh because the magazine it was published in was the Dengeki Daioh, right? So it's Azuma's manga published in the Dengeki Daioh. It's Azumanga Daioh, right? And if you ever if you go to like a Japanese bookstore like Kinokuniya, you might be able to get a copy of Dengeki Daioh. It's not for little girls, let me tell you that.
Now, the thing about Gekiga, the reason we think it's important, and also seinen, is that America in the 90s, when they were really trying to get anime manga out, they marketed it in a very different way from the way they do now. It was this ultra-violent stuff from Japan, check out how bloody and gory it is. And they brought out things like Sanctuary, and they brought out things like Vampire Hunter D, and all those violent robot shows. And they really pushed it as cartoons for big people, adults. Violent and sexy, and look at this isn't for kids.
Yeah, but they focused on the violent aspects of it, which, or the sexual aspects of these anime and manga. And they did have violent and sexual aspects to them, but a lot of those shows, not all of them, but a lot of them had other aspects to them, which are the reasons we actually enjoyed them. And the ones that didn't have other aspects, no one knows what those are anymore, because no one, they're
But the
good.
thing is, with manga specifically, what sort of happened, of course, we're paraphrasing over a lot of anime industry history. Basically, they hit on gold when they started marketing shoujo manga specifically and bringing it out, and then the shonen manga. And the face of manga in America really changed. It wasn't just those ultra-violent things from Japan. It was like, this is stuff for 14-year-olds to read. And, I read all this stuff. I read a lot of shonen and shoujo manga, but the marketing changed. As a result, all the stuff like this kind of got dropped. A lot of they weren't republished. They're out of print. Sanctuary is super out of print. And even though I think it's one of the better manga out there, it is very difficult to find, very difficult to get.
Yeah, a lot of these manga, for example, Sanctuary, what happened was Viz published this in the US way back, way before Tokyo Pop ever showed up. And they published it in normal United States comic books, like floppy comic books, one chapter at a time. And you can still find those, even though that's a bad idea. It can be really expensive and they take up a lot of space.
And you're going to be missing one.
Right. And then they republished them in, the normal books. I think it was 9 volumes in the US or something like that.
So I think 7, I forget.
I forget how many volumes.
It took us a year and a half to track down copies that were legible and readable of this manga.
And then it was out of print, and it's still out of print. And, we sort of, by pushing this manga, because we've been doing this panel for over a year, we've sort of pushed people, and they sort of cleaned out all the dealer rooms on the East Coast of this manga, so it's even harder to find than it used to be.
But there's the point is that there's a lot of manga like this that was either influenced by Gekiga or just is different from what is typically brought out in America that you never see. Like Kazuo Koike, who does Lone Wolf and Cub and all those things, he wrote a golf manga that is just about golf. And you know what? It's awesome. But that's never going to be brought out here. And imagine what would happen if they took this golf manga, translated it, and put it in like a golf magazine. Because it's just a dead serious golf manga. But that sort of marketing doesn't happen. The anime industry really went toward shoujo and shonen. They went towards certain things. And I'm not going to comment on the industry, but they're not doing so well right now. But, I mean, this doesn't look like the typical manga we see in America. I mean, this is politics, raising the flag of Okinawa on the mainland. The guy on the right you see there is Isaoka. He's a member of the Japanese Diet. And this is an important speech he is giving before the Diet in Japan. Let the poor eat barley. If you want to eat rice, then work for it. And that is the dramatic moment in this Gekiga-influenced seinen manga, the stuff that we never see around here.
Yeah, if I showed you a picture of that, you wouldn't know it was, Japanese.
I mean, and look at the art here. I mean, look at, I keep pointing at the screen like you can somehow see what I'm pointing at. It's realistic, it's dirty, it's gritty, it's scary. It's not your Princess Peach, happy, let's go high school romance.
Yeah, I mean, the artist here is someone who I'm going to mention a lot in this panel. The artist here is a man named Ryuichi Ikegami.
AKA
right?
the man.
Ryuichi Ikegami, his art, you can always recognize it because it's good, but it looks the same. Every main character of his looks exactly the same, right? The main character in Sanctuary looks exactly the same as the main character in Strain, looks exactly the same as the main character in Crying Freeman.
In Samurai Crusader.
In Samurai Crusader. All of the manga that are drawn by Ryuichi Ikegami look exactly the same.
Now,
they all look great, but they all look the same.
If you go to Tezuka, he did this thing where, like, you see he had the same kinds of characters over and over again. He had, like, he almost looked at his manga like it was a play. He has these actors that he draws playing the different parts. And Ryuichi Ikegami does the same thing. Like, he drew heavily from Tezuka's style. Granted, some people argue that he just can't draw any other way in this case. And you can go either way. It's hard to say. But you can at least draw the parallel, whether or not that is actually his intent. And also, the plots of these things are so different from what you see. I mean, it's kind of, yeah, the Gekiga joke is that in a normal manga, they do this. But in a Gekiga-inspired manga, they do that. In a normal, like, shonen manga, if there's a problem with the Yakuza over on the other side of town, they go and fight with them in this dramatic, long, drawn-out, stupid, I use my mob fist technique. Ah! In a seinen, they fill a cruise ship with Yakuza and just park it off the coast and just sit there being intimidated. This is like the big scene in Sanctuary, where they just take this cruise ship, and the Yakuza are there, and this is dead serious, and you read, it's like, I can't believe he did that, and then the things that happen afterward are just crazy.
Look at that aura of magic around the building there.
That aura of magic and or fire. But you don't see this stuff. Now, the thing is, seinen manga can also be unintentionally hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about how, these things were originally marketed to the U.S. as it's sexual, it's violent, and it's great for many other reasons, but there is sex and violence in there.
I'm going to set the stage a little bit, and I have to apologize, but we're going to talk a lot about this manga called Sanctuary, which you will not be able to get all of. Like, it's incredibly difficult.
Yeah, this panel is kind of evil. We sort of get you really psyched up to read this one book that you're never going to be able to find a copy of.
Luckily, a bunch of the other stuff we'll talk about, like Eagle and Samurai Crusader and all that stuff, you can get it. It's not that hard. And some of it, luckily, as we'll talk about, their publishers were starting to really bring this stuff back. And of course, you can always read Osamu Tezuka's Gekiga works, which are very similar to this. But Sanctuary is about two people, two young boys who survived the death camps in Cambodia. For one, they were there with their parents who were researchers and scientists. They survived. They come back to Japan, and they basically decide that they're now brothers. And they see the Japanese society around them at the time, and they decide that this is crap, that this can't go down. The government is run by corrupt old men. The kids don't care about anything. The adults don't have any civic pride. They don't understand what it is to be Japan and what it is that makes this country great. So they're going to spend their entire lives changing Japan, making it into their vision of what Japan should be.
Into their sanctuary?
Perhaps, you see. You see what they did there. So Asami and Hojo, they draw lots. One of them is going to take the high road, going to go to school, go to college, join the government, take from the top down, take over the government. Whoever loses this is going to go the low road, drop out of high school, join the mob, the Yakuza, work their way up, do whatever it takes to become the head of the bottom of Japan. And then they're going to fight their way together, meet in the middle, and change the world. So Asami ends up taking the high road. Now, the man on the right is Senator Isaoka, who's basically...
Isn't he like the secretary?
Well, not
general
senator.
or something like that?
He is like the big dude in the Japanese government.
He's not the prime minister, but basically he's sort of like, he's the man in charge in the government. You're not going to get anything done if you don't go through him.
And Asami is basically the intern here. Now, he really needs Isaoka's support. He needs this man or he can't join the government because Japanese government, and this is kind of true, the politics is really stagnant and slow, and things do not change quickly. And the same party, like the same two parties run everything forever. Kind of like another country. But anyway, in the sanctuary world, the old men are all in charge. Asami, are you up to taking this woman with me? Now look at how dramatic they portray this scene, yet how silly it is. A politician has no need for common sense. You can't become a politician if you're embarrassed to show your ass. Look at that. The drama and the face. That is the Gekiga face. Stand up, walk forward on your own 2 feet. I'm a man, and this is what men do. And just look on his face in that third panel.
I'll be glad to, sir. All right, and then all he can do is he's thinking about, all right, Hojo, right? His friend Hojo, who was in the Cambodian killing fields with this dude, right? They're like family, is in the Yakuza. So he's thinking, this is bad. But of course I'm going to do it. The guy who, my brother, who is now in the Yakuza, he's doing things 10,000 times worse than this. He's killing people, getting shot at, beating people up.
This is nothing compared to what he's had to do. His whole life is riding on me.
If he fails at becoming a politician, then Hojo's, sorry Yakuza life has gone to waste.
And I mean, look at the panels and how he breaks out of the frame. And this happens a lot in Gekiga-inspired works where the action lines are on people giving speeches. People break out of the frame and dramatic poses, and it's very different from the things we tend to see. Meanwhile, Hojo joined the Yakuza. That's the life he's leading. The worst thing he has to do is seduce a cop who's posing as a hooker or something. Living it up, having martinis, and meanwhile, nothing compared to what he has to do.
Okay, so now we're going to show you some bad things.
Now, before we continue, the point of this is that Gekiga was a movement, like any other movement, and it inspired a lot of great things. And some Gekiga is great. But Gekiga is violent, it is incredibly misogynistic, it is often pornographic, the undertones and the stories in Gekiga are often incredibly offensive. So if you think you will be offended by misogyny, possibly rape, but luckily we're not going to show you any actual rape yet. You might want to leave the room. I'm glad none of you are leaving the room. No one has ever left the room at this disclaimer, but we have to do the disclaimer. There's a reason this is 18 plus panel.
We're not going to lie to you. Gekiga is good and Gekiga is bad. And we have to show you the good and the bad. Also, the bad is really entertaining if you come at it the right way.
Yes, because when we did this panel at Otakon, and we showed this and some far more horrible things. And then someone in the audience asked, so do you guys actually like Gekiga? And she was hot, she was furious. Can you honestly defend this? How can you like it? And we're about to say, well, no, this is historic. You look at this and you see that this is the undercurrent of Japan at the time. And also, these people were writing out of anger. They were writing out of frustration. They were pouring their heart, as crazy it may be in some cases, out onto the page. And while Gekiga might have been reprehensible in many regards, what it did was it changed the face of comics. And it influenced Osamu Tezuka, the man who created manga. It caused him to think about it and write it in a different way. And we got all these great things like Sanctuary and Eagle. But before I can say that, Gerald looks at her with a face that has been called the rape face by people who saw it, and says, passion.
So while Tezuka was influenced in a positive way by something like Eagle, or maybe even Sanctuary, Wounded Man can only provide a negative influence.
I think I need to let Scott control it at this point.
Yeah,
now,
so
I will at least say that this is primarily unintentionally hilarious, but you'll also see what Gekiga is all about.
Well,
at least I can say this. Tatsumi stuff, the Pushman, is still offensive and difficult to deal with, and very.
But it's not blatant like this stuff.
It's more direct as to what Japan was going through. It's a story about a man who works in a factory in post-war Japan, and someone else gets hurt in the factory and gets money for it. He gets compensation. And then his wife is always complaining about how he has no money and he's a worthless man and he stands for nothing. He doesn't bring home the bacon. So he's in the factory the next day and he mangles himself on purpose because he realizes that he feels like his life has no meaning in post-war Japan. Men aren't men anymore and he is not a man. He can't accomplish. He can't do anything. So he mangles himself and he gets money. And his wife is happy and he's happy and they live the high life. But now his wife leaves him because he's not even a man anymore. He's this mangled wreck of a man. And that's the end, basically.
Yeah, so he goes back to work in the factory. It's like, my wife is always complaining I don't have money. I'll hurt myself and get workers' comp. Now my wife is living it up and I'm a guy with no arm. And then she leaves me. I go back to work. That's a Tatsumi story, right? You can defend a Tatsumi story. There's some artistic integrity there. It's hard to defend the Wounded Man. Real hard.
Man. Let's just go.
So Kazuo Koike is the guy who did Lone Wolf and Cub, perhaps the most prolific, one of the most important manga writers ever. The art here is again by Ryuichi Gekiga, right?
Now, has anyone here read Lone Wolf and Cub? That is the least violent, most sane, most followable thing he's ever done.
Pretty much, except maybe the golf manga.
Oh yeah, the golf manga. Even the golf manga.
So Wounded Man. Reading Wounded Man, you can learn what's really in the mind of Kazuo Koike. Now, alright, so Wounded Man is about these two characters. So this main girl character, this main guy character, typical whatever, okay? Alright, so basically what happens here is the girl gets in big trouble, she's kidnapped and whatnot, alright? And they find out she's a virgin and whatever. Okay, so, yeah, he just,
See, and notice it's the same framing as the Sanctuary shows you, the same kind of, like it's put together, it's drawn by the same guy, but yet, look at that! Anyway.
And then he apologizes, as if that makes it okay. Alright, but anyway, so at one point the girl's kidnapped, and by these other guys, see the guy with the beard and the mustache, and one of those are the bad guys.
You're pointing at the screen, much like I was.
I know, it's hard not to, right? And they put this bug in her, like this physical, you see, it's like an actual buzzing bug, and they say, once you get stung by this guy, you'll get horny as hell. So basically, they're going to take advantage of her, they have her tied up, and this bug is going to get her all horny, I guess, to improve the situation for these bad guys.
But here comes the Wounded Man!
Right, so the Wounded Man shows up, and he lifts the tree out of the ground, and she's tied to the tree. He takes the tree out of the ground and lifts it in the air.
I like the legs sticking out at the top.
The legs sticking out really make the frame there.
They really make that frame.
Yeah, let's just look at that for a little bit more. It's a guy lifting a tree with a woman tied to it upside down. Okay? Alright, so the bad guys come over and they're going to get him while he's holding the tree, right? You're messing with us, right? So he throws the tree into the air, he beats up the guys, and then catches the tree on its way down. You can see it on the right there, right? Because he had to duck down to catch the tree in time. Now, the tree has been flipped over, right? So now he's holding the tree from the other end. He's not human. He stands up while holding the tree. Holy shit, he's powerful. Oh, look at that guy. Alright.
Now that is again the Gekiga face. We already talked about the It's always like they're looking down or they're looking up at you like this. Like, I am going to win, whatever this is. The Gekiga face comes up a lot in Seinen manga.
So he's got blood in his eyes and he can't see, right? So he's holding this tree in the air with this woman on it, tied to it. These bad guys, he just punched them, but they'll probably get up again, right? And he's got blood in his eyes, so he can't see. How is he supposed to he's got to put the tree down, he's got to get the girl off the tree, he's got to beat up the guys if they come at him again with knives. Blood in the eyes is a really tough situation. What's he going to do?
What do you do?
Piss on me so I can wash it off. Alright, and of course...
She's not as taken aback by this as I would hope.
Yeah, she's a little bit worried, but I guess she goes for it.
Artistry. Now, if you don't know what led up to this, I call this picture clarity of vision.
See, but I mean, look, even though this is really ludicrous, that's a Gekiga face right there.
I've seen this so many times, I just can't.
It's funny every time, people, right? Wounded Man. Alright, so Wounded Man. What is Wounded Man about? It doesn't matter what Wounded Man is about. All you need to know is that the bad guy in Wounded Man is GPX. Welcome to GPX. What does GPX stand for? I'll tell you what GPX stands for. GPX. Is that a pro football team? You're not from the US, sorry.
Of course, this dialogue is classic.
This is a classic dialogue, right? It's
And you
a
think,
lot like in bad 80s movies.
You might think, oh, just translated badly. No, Kazuma Koike is a bad man.
GPX, can anyone guess what GPX stands for? Alright, GPX stands for God's Pornographic X-Rated Film. It represents the X-rated films created by God. Who would have guessed that? Anybody? Yeah. So
that's why they have that bug in stock.
I guess, right? That's the kind of ludicrous, undefendable stuff that's in Wounded Man, but if you come at it from our angle, it's funny.
If you come at it from that angle, I just look at that. But. Now, here's something a little more sensible. You see, Sanctuary, which I keep talking about, which again you can't read, is something that is not Gekiga, but it is influenced heavily by Gekiga, and it was drawn by the same guy. And I'm going to talk about one character from this, called Mr. Tokai, who's kind of the adversary slash friend slash mentor of one of the main characters.
He's sort of the anti-hero. It's like he's nominally on the side of good, but he does lots and lots of bad things. But he's like doing all these terrible things, but you like him anyway, and you don't know why.
Which is a common theme in these sorts of things. As opposed to Gekiga, where you're not sympathetic. You're going, what the hell is going on, Kazuo? Now this is Mr. Tokai. He's a Yakuza guy, very stereotypical, pretty cool looking guy. Look at him there. Again, Gekiga framing, all this sort of thing. Now Mr. Tokai really only has two interests in life. Sex and violence. He is a Yakuza through and through. Now, he's also a very classy dude. I mean, he's with Hojo on this business trip somewhere for the Yakuza. And what does he say? I mean, could you ever guess? What is it? He's going to ask for a drink. Maybe he's going to compliment her on her dress. No, he's a classy dude. Classy in the highest order that you can be classy. Now, of course, if he's having sex, this scene is iconic of Mr. Tokai. Again, this is some of this Gekiga silliness. The Yakuza come in. They're gonna kill him. Oh crap, what am I gonna do? Of course, he punches the woman he's having sex with. For absolutely no reason. That is known as the Gekiga reaction. Goes for his gun. Too late, he's caught naked by the, actually that's a member of the Chinese triad. He can't do anything. So what does he do? Wait a minute, will you? You can at least let me have my last screw before I go. Now, I like the fact that the woman reacts the way you would react. What? And the Chinese guy about to kill him reacts the same way. What? I love the
And then they just show you the building, as if they don't need to tell you what happened next. You just know.
Now, this is where we get into it a little bit more. This is where we start to talk about where you take the silliness of Gekiga, and yet you can use the ideas of it, or the frames, or the drawing style, or just the undercurrent, and make something different. Now, Mr. Tokai has a lot of issues with Hojo. And this scene here is where he was supposed to kill Hojo, and he decides not to. Like, he decided not to, and he's going to call Hojo and warn him about this other kid that is out on him. And then he stops and he hangs up the phone. You know, he laughs. The hell am I doing? I almost turned faggot there. You're the only man I ever went after and wasn't able to kill Hojo. And he's having this really, difficult moment internally because, and I'll get to why. Like, it might say, why does he act homosexual? What's the deal with I almost turned faggot on it? But we'll get into that. Now, he has this important moment, and then what's he going to do? He's sitting there, and he's really, really distraught, and he sees a woman walk by.
The panel in the top right really tells all.
One of his prostitutes. I mean, that is not the face you have when you're about to go rape one of the prostitutes that you own. Look at that. It's like a kid in a candy store. It's very, very Gekiga there. And of course, Mr. Tokai rapes a lot of people. You really are not sympathetic to Mr. Tokai. He rapes his prostitutes. He beats up the men that work under him. He's a cold-hearted killer through and through. I mean, and they even make light of it. Like, what's Mr. Tokai on the rampage about? That girl just started today. Woo boy. But Mr. Tokai, there's actually a lot more to him. You see, this is a scene where he is about to basically rape the commissioner of the police because she is on to them, and there's this whole plot reason. And, he breaks into her apartment. And he's going to rape her. He does the classic Gekiga. I mean, look at me. I'm a man. How strong I am. And his Yakuza tattoos. I just like that picture because he looks like a pro wrestler. But he ends up, now before we continue, let's have a flashback. Mr. Tokai, a long time ago, a young man named Hojo, who dropped out of high school. This is obviously the main character. Doesn't know anything about him. He joined the Yakuza. And Mr. Tokai, like Mr. Hojo has just been the best Yakuza ever. And he's a young kid. And Mr. Tokai really, really likes him, like in a big way. I mean, look, of course, classic Gekiga face here, as always. Looking down, looking up. That's Hojo as a kid. And Mr. Tokai is like impressed with him at every juncture. And they make light of this a lot, where he'll kiss Hojo, he'll hug him, he'll do these things where the rest of the Yakuza go, what's wrong with him? Is he gay? What's the deal with him and that kid? But it's actually a really serious thing, and they make light of it and they bring it up all the time, but there's a reason for it. There's actually some depth there. Unlike Wounded Man, where there is no depth. GPX stands for GPX, and there is nothing below that. There is no redeeming point where you go, oh, it's a metaphor for blood. No, it's just GPX. But you see, Mr. Tokai, the Yakuza had some hard times, like their faction of it. So he does the Gekiga thing. Gets in a bulldozer with a stick of dynamite, goes into the enemy Yakuza headquarters, destroys it, blows it up, and kills all of them. So of course, he is sent to jail. He's taken away, and his last missive to Hojo was to take care of his wife. So he's taken off to jail, and of course, he is going to jail, head held high. It's a good thing to go to jail. It's like a mark of pride among the Yakuza. So Hojo is left with his wife. And there's this scene that you almost think would be comedic, where his wife turns around, let me show you something, and she disrobes. And I like the kind of golden boy look in the bottom right that Hojo has, as he thinks that this woman is about to do something.
I also like how the only difference between Hojo and Tokai's wife is the hair.
But instead, we see this scene. And basically, Mr. Tokai and his wife were Yakuza through and through. And despite the fact that Mr. Tokai goes around raping and murdering, and he's a horrible person, he loved his wife. And they talk about this a lot. He loved his wife. And her and him were the same. They were Yakuza to the end. This is all that they were. They burned with I guess, Gekiga power. That was their lives. His wife was killed. This is all before, I guess, the real story starts in Sanctuary. It's kind of a flashback. His wife is killed in a Yakuza hit. And this is when Mr. Tokai changes. He loses it. I mean, Hojo, the young kid, walks in, and don't look this way. If you turn around, I'll kill you. You can't let him see him this vulnerable. And basically, he loved his wife so much, and he respected her so much because she was so strong, that no woman could ever be as strong as the idealized version of his wife, who is now dead. So as a result, he's reverted into this weird life where he can't love anyone, he can't respect anyone. But then he met Hojo, and Hojo is everything he had ever wanted out of someone to love. He loves Hojo in every way a man can love a man, except he's not gay. He can't love Hojo in that last way. He can't be intimate with Hojo. He can't love him, the final step. So he kind of psychologically he loses it, and he rapes his prostitutes, and he rapes women, and he's misogynistic and horrible and brutal. And that is like the deep, horrible outlet of the rage he feels because he loves this man Hojo desperately, but he can't be with Hojo because in the end, he's not gay. So then that scene, I almost turned faggot there, is actually, there's depth there. There's literary meaning there that you don't get in Gekiga. It's kind of like Gekiga was the catalyst to say, kind of like in America, we have like the Dark Knight Returns and things where, look, comics can be dark, they can be gritty, they can be serious, they can also be meaningful. We have the same thing in Japan, where Gekiga allowed people to make serious comics.
In fact, Frank Miller, his influence for Wolverine and such was because he read Lone Wolf and Cub and other things by Kazuo Koike. That's where, you learned how to make scary Batman.
And you read Wolverine, and you go back to Lone Wolf and Cub, and you go, oh, it's Wolverine.
Yeah. All right, so in Sanctuary, there's a scene where Hojo originally, he's a punk kid who dropped out of high school. How is he going to join the Yakuza, right? So he just walks into a Yakuza office and says, I want to join the Yakuza. And the Yakuza, Yakuza are bad, but they're sort of honorably bad. They don't want to shoot him or beat him up.
And remember, this is, the Yakuza of this universe. Kind of like the idealized version of the mob. And the real mob isn't really like that, but this is the Yakuza in this world. And this is a scene that, it's not scary or crazy or funny like a lot of the other things, but this kind of epitomizes the core of a lot of these Gekiga-inspired works, because they all have scenes like this all the time.
Right, so he comes to the Yakuza office and he wants to join, and they're just trying to find a way to get him out of here, right? Maybe scare him away so he won't join the Yakuza.
And they do this for everyone. So we get this scene where Mr. Tokai has some other punk kid who's dropped out of high school, wants to join the Yakuza. A little tough guy. He's got the little tough guy hair there. He's trying to do a Gekiga face, but he can't quite pull it off. And he wants to join the Yakuza. So what does Mr. Tokai do? All right, stab your hand with this knife.
No.
The kid freaks out. No, seriously, stab your hand with this knife. And, of course, he's not going to do it. But, of course, look at all the way the panels are put together and the way drama is presented in these manga as opposed to, I guess, typical manga. And, of course, he doesn't do it. He chickens out.
And the Yakuza successfully scared the kid away, and he doesn't want to join the Yakuza.
But look at what the other Yakuza say. But, sir, there aren't any young guys who can do something like that.
Yeah, how are we going to get new recruits if you keep scaring them all away?
There was a guy who could do it. We flash back to when a young Hojo, who's just dropped out of high school to change the world, wants to join the Yakuza. And he's presented with the same conundrum. Now look how he has the Gekiga aura, the Gekiga barrier. I can't turn back now. And before anyone can react, he just stabs his hand.
Yeah, as unflinchingly as Asami took that woman with the politician, he stabbed his hand.
This is the only time we ever see Mr. Tokai taken aback by anything. Doesn't that hurt, boy? And this...
Hurt so much I could cry.
That is the Gekiga face. As best as it can ever be shown to you, it hurts so bad I could cry. You don't get that in Naruto. Now... This is one of my favorite scenes. This is another old Yakuza guy. And you know, Hojo, I've been meaning to ask you for some time. Why did you become a Yakuza? And this is kind of the central point, the central theme. And this is one of those things where, because I read Sanctuary, like this volume, a long time ago. I was a lot younger. I was before the snow crash threshold. You know the snow crash thing? Everyone before they're 25 thinks that if something happened, they could just go off and be a badass. And then I was under 25, so this really meant something to me. Now I'm over 25. I look at it and go, yeah, I could never do that. But why did Hojo become a Yakuza? Because you can do in a single day what it takes an ordinary man 30 years to do. And that really inspired me when I was under 25. Now, I just look at it and think, man, that is Gekiga. So, we've shown you some Gekiga, we've shown you the peeing tree and such, we've shown you Mr. Tokai, but we can't just talk about Sanctuary, it's not the Sanctuary panel. What it really
I think it has
is,
become the Sanctuary panel.
Of course it's the Sanctuary panel, and the Movie Night panel, but what is Gekiga? What did it actually do? Like, what can you read today, other than Sanctuary, where you can see this Gekiga influence?
Alright, well first you can read anything with Kazuo Koike's name on it. Now, some things with Kazuo Koike's name on it are Lone Wolf and Cub, and some things with Kazuo Koike's name on it are Golf, and some things with Kazuo Koike's name on it are Wounded Men. So you have to really be careful. But if you see Kazuo Koike's name on something, you know, you can go to the store and from Dark Horse Comics, you can get Lady Snowblood, you can get, was it Samurai Crusader? Or
no, Samurai Crusader is
not Samurai Crusader, Samurai Executioner, I think. It's same in the same publishing format as Lone Wolf and Cub, those little white books. And all that stuff that Dark Horse has published in the U.S. is the quality Kazuo Koike stuff you're looking for.
And he's one of the people where if anyone would say, like, Gekiga is still being made today, Kazuo Koike is kind of the person making it.
Yeah, Kazuo Koike actually opened up a school, and the school was called, like, Kazuo Koike's Gekiga School. And a lot of the, really big mangaka, like Rumiko Takahashi, went to that school to learn to make comics.
Now think about it. The person who made Urusei Yatsura and Inuyasha and Ranma One Half went to that man's school. Like,
look at that guy.
Look at that guy.
Look at that beard. He's crazy.
That is the man with the moment. Oh,
he came up with that tree. That was his idea.
And he, I've never seen a picture of him not smiling. Now, you can't read Sanctuary. It's so hard to get. Eagle is very similar to Sanctuary, but you can totally get it. It's not that hard. Eagle is also one of my favorite manga ever, and more of this stuff needs to come out. Eagle is, again, Gekiga based, but it doesn't take the violence, it doesn't take the rape, the misogyny, all these things. It basically just takes kind of that Gekiga face and the framing and the way the story is put together in the drama and applies it to the 2000 presidential election in the United States. And the thing is, it was actually written by someone who came to America and followed the presidential campaigns around and studied American politics extensively. And it is incredibly true. Like, if you know a lot about American politics, like you're into it and you're like inside baseball, and you know how campaigns are run, it is incredibly true to life. And it is incredibly accurate and well put together. The only thing wrong with it is that because it's fiction, the characters are all awesome.
And yeah, it's not, you know, it's the current president, what's his name? Will, I think?
Well, basically, it is set in 2000, but the story is that there is, you know, the previous president, let's call him Bill. And they don't give you his...
And the first lady named Ellery.
And the election's going to happen, and it starts before the primaries. And you've got Al Noah, who is Al Gore. Like, it is Al Gore, straight up.
I mean, look, you can see right there on the cover, right? Who's that in the bottom left on the cover?
That is Bill and Al Noah. And on the other side, we've got, I forget the guy's name.
I forget the guy's name.
But you've got the Republican, all the different people in the Republican primary, and it really follows the campaigns pretty true to form, except caricatured and idealized. It's kind of, this is what American politics should totally be. And you'll really feel that if you read this. This manga is great. But the kick is that all this is going on, but there's a dark horse. There is a senator from Hawaii who is half Japanese, half American, who fought in Vietnam, who is in the primary along with all these other people. And it follows the politics true to form, and it's amazing. I'm just making sure I didn't have any examples from it. But the drama, instead of, you know, the drama of Mr. Tokai or the drama of the tree, one of the dramatic scenes that is portrayed just as well and just as all that stuff is where he goes to this banquet for a political fundraising thing. So great. And he eats a gigantic meal with these people while he's doing this town hall.
Well, you missed it before, right? So he's you know, you have a tight schedule when you're campaigning around the country, right? So they're like, oh crap, we accidentally scheduled 2 dinners on the same night.
So he has to go to like the Italian whatever and do this gigantic dinner, and he can't just not eat because that would really be offensive.
If he doesn't clean the plate, they're gonna be like, right, you gotta, you know, this is a political thing. You gotta clean that plate off, and so they'll think, you know, you're so great, and they'll think you love the food, and they'll be happy with you and vote for you. So
or at the very least, you don't create a YouTube moment.
So he's got to eat 2 multi-course meals, one after the other. And somehow they turn this into like the most dramatic thing. And then after he's done, he finishes eating the second meal, right? And you know he's looking full, he's got a little sweat.
It cuts like his campaign office, and they're like, oh my god, he did it.
And all his campaign people are like, oh my god, is he going to do it?
It's just like the scene at like the end of War Games, like at the end of some NASA disaster movie where the whole room goes, ah,
and then a little girl comes up to him with a slice of cake on a plate.
I made this for you, and it shows like all the cameras on him, and this is like the most dramatic moment ever. And Eagle is.
I won't spoil it for you. What happens with the cake?
Seriously, and this is actually easy to get. You can get it on Amazon. You can find it on eBay.
It's published in 2 different formats. If you see little books that say Eagle on them, don't buy them. If you see big black books that say Eagle on them, buy them. You only need 5 of those. The little books, you're going to need like 30 of them.
I mean, look, this was nominated, just so I pointed out here, for 4 Eisner Awards. It is a fantastic manga. And again, out of print, stuff like this is rarely brought out anymore. In a similar vein, but a little more silly, the first president of Japan is about the first president of Japan. It is just, what if Japan had a president in the U.S. style? And then North Korea declared war, and then China declares war, and everything goes crazy, and it is just kind of, I don't know, military fanboy fantasy, but it's at the same time, it's put together in the same dramatic way as Eagle and Sanctuary and all these works. And if you like this sort of thing, or you want to see this sort of thing, this is heavily Gekiga influenced, and also out of print, but really, really, really easy to get.
Yeah, if you look at the bargain bins under like all the booths out there, like where all the discount old crappy manga is, you'll see First President of Japan out there. It's only 3 volumes, at least if I remember. Crying Freeman is another Koike Ikigami work, and it's, you know, it's pretty famous. And if you read Lone Wolf and Cub and you like it, and you're not sure if you want to go down the Koike rabbit hole,
you might not want to.
You might not want to. Crying Freeman is the first step. So test Crying Freeman. It's sort of in between. It's the least Koike of the Koike works. And it's pretty famous and actually pretty significant. And you can buy this actually in print Dark Horse is printing this right now. It's like these big yellow and orange volumes. They're real easy to get. You can get them in the bookstore even, right? And they publish in this nice omnibus format. It's real cheap. You can get the whole thing, 5 or 6 big books. I forget how many. And Crying Freeman is basically, the story is you have this guy and he's like a potter. He makes pottery, right? And he gets tangled up somehow in crazy Chinese mafia doings, and they use some sort of mystical magic on him, and now they control him.
See, a little bit of Koike coming in.
A little bit of Koike. And he's forced to be the greatest assassin ever against his will. You know, that's why you gotta have free man, right? So basically they force him to commit like these horrible assassinations, and he's wicked dangerous, and he always succeeds, you know, and no one ever catches him or anything. But whenever he kills someone, he cries. So it's like he'll be sitting there and pull off this amazing assassination, and then he won't actually sob, but like tears just pour out of his eyes. And that's why they call him the Crying Freeman, because the tears are the only freedom the man has. And it has a deep message. It also has some Wounded Man type stuff in it, but not that bad, not as bad as the tree.
Yeah, basically...
It just has like naked old Yakuza lady doing crazy ninja tricks. Right?
Not
as bad as the tree.
The more Koike you get, the closer you get to the Wounded Man, and the more Gekiga can be enjoyed. I enjoy it actually in an ironic sense, because you gotta admit, some of that was hilarious. But there are people who enjoy it on a surface value. I thought it was really kind of scary. But if it says anything, the fact that we're using Koike as an adjective, kind of like Masamune Shiro, you know, how Shiro-tastic is this anime? Ghost in the Shell is a little Shiro-tastic, but Orion, his manga, is like the most Shiro-tastic there is.
Pure Shiro-tastic.
Oh, we don't have any more slides, but if you're really interested in this stuff, because we're running out of time, actually.
We are out of time.
No, we're not. Let's go till 9. We have 7.4 more minutes.
Sweet.
But one thing we can say, and we'll take a question or two, is that if you want to read this stuff, if you want to read seinen manga or josei. No, by the way, just to clarify, seinen is like shonen for people our age.
It's for college dudes. Like
josei
we're older than
is
college
manga
dudes.
aimed at like older women, like 20 to 30-year-old women. And examples of that are like Bride of Demos, or what's a good example?
Hataraki Men Kanji.
Or Brother Dear Brother.
Yeah, kind of.
The worst show ever.
If you want to see actually josei anime, there's an animation block. You know how Toonami until recently we just got canceled? Alright, was an animation block. So it's like they have a bunch of shows, they show them all one after the other, and they put a name across, you know, the whole block. Same thing like Adult Swim is a programming block. There's a programming block in Japan called Noitamana. Noitamana is animation spelled backwards, right? And that shows pretty much if there's an anime and it's in the Noitamana block, it's a good show, and a lot of those are josei shows.
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure Blue Drop, which is coming out kind of now, is considered josei.
I'm
not 100% sure. I didn't look at where it's actually being edited or anything. But if you want to read this stuff, sadly, the vast majority of it never comes out in America. I mean, you go to like the Kinokuniya at the bookstore in America, in New York City, and look at the manga, you'll see 100 manga that look just like Sanctuary. There's like the wall of Yakuza manga. There's like the section of awesome golf manga. There's the section of like manga about truckers, like fighting with each other to be the best damn trucker in Japan. And you really don't see any of that. But you can get, Sanctuary, you can get all of it, all the things we just pointed out. Osamu Tezuka, because as we said, he really got influenced by Gekiga. Read his Apollo Song, or Mu, M-W, or Buddha, or Phoenix. Phoenix, by the way, was Osamu Tezuka's life work. He died writing it. It wasn't finished. How many volumes are actually out before he died?
I think they put out like 11 or 12 volumes in the U.S. and one of them is sort of like sort of a final volume. They sort of stuck together, but it's not really. But every Viz put all of it out. So if you want to read Phoenix, you can get all of it from Viz. But if you want Gekiga in English, what you want to do is your go-to places are you got to go to Viz to get Phoenix. You can also go to Viz Signature Series. Anything that says Viz Signature Series on it, something like Monster or Gogo 13, those tend to be more seinen type works that you're going to be interested in. If you go to Vertical Incorporated, all their Tezuka stuff, it's pretty obvious which of their Tezuka works, they pretty much are putting out all the Tezuka that's worthwhile right now. And Dark Horse. Dark Horse puts out all the Koige stuff and similar works to that. So
also, all my guys.
So those are the 3 publishers you're going to want to look at if this kind of manga is up your alley.
And if you want something like, if you want something enjoyable, like a romp that's funny, but not funny in the wounded man way, but with the same style, Ryuichi Igami illustrated a manga that's really easy to get because it's not widely known, it's not popular, most people don't know about it, called Samurai Crusader. It looks just like Sanctuary, like the main character looks the same. Basically, it is that guy and Ernest Hemingway, and not just Ernest Hemingway as played by Sean Connery, and Pablo Picasso go on a riotous journey around the world seeking out the heart of Japan. But it's hilarious, but yet it's still, like, you see the Gekiga influence, and you see the seinen, and it's amazing and hilarious and great, but it's not scary and pornographic. It's something you can give to your teenage kid, and they'll really enjoy it, and they'll get into it. But you don't have to worry about them asking you about that true business.
Alright, so do you want to take one or two questions?
Yes, we've got 4 minutes, so you had your hand up a bunch, so...
Koike is alive. Yes.
Kazuko Koike comes to anime conventions in Japan all the time. He's been to the U.S., I think, in a couple of times in the past.
Koike is definitely still alive. He still works. I'm pretty sure his school is probably still open. He still makes, golf manga, the last I heard. And he has very close relations with Dark Horse. So someone like, what the hell's that guy's name?
Which guy?
The guy who doesn't work for Dark Horse anymore.
Oh, I don't remember his name either.
Oh, I forgot his name.
But the guy who doesn't work for Dark Horse anymore.
Right, I'll remember his name if I can figure. It's in the back of different books. But yeah, Koike is alive. He still works. He
still looks like
he's
that.
still crazy. Oh, Senpai Shirato, yeah, I mean, he was responsible for Garo. He's sort of like the number 2 Gekiga guy. I just actually forgot his name until you mentioned it, though.
Yeah, I mean, part of this is originally we thought we'd do a panel that was just like the history of, just talk about Gekiga the whole time. But it was, there's a lot to talk about, and there's a lot of intricacies, but at the same time, some of it isn't that well researched in general. Like, it's hard to get all the information about the lending libraries and all the other people other than you get to Tatsumi and then to him, and the further down you go, the less credible resources there are and the more kind of apocryphal stories there are. And also, Sanctuary is my favorite manga ever. So this is the Gekiga is awesome, but read the things that Gekiga inspired as opposed to read Gekiga.
Yeah, it's like we don't speak Japanese and we're not super experts. I know sitting up here makes me seem like I'm supposed to be super expert.
We've got a badge. You said professional, obviously.
Obviously we're experts. No, there are people who know a lot more than we do that, they speak Japanese, they can read these things. We can't. So we sort of stick with what we know so that we at least sound like we know what we're talking about.
Also, it's kind of the overview. There were people who were working on stuff when Tezuka was working on stuff, and there were animations before him and that sort of thing. But it's safe to say that Tezuka was the father of anime, the father of manga. Yeah, and it's safe to say that Tatsumi was the founding father of Gekiga.
Yeah, but Senpai Shirato was definitely he's your number 2 guy in terms of Gekiga. And also, if people, what they consider is what Gekiga is actually still being made today, that's actually Gekiga and not seinen, the only one you can really point at is Go-Go 13, because Go-Go 13 has been continuously published, since those days up until today, and Go-Go 13 is still coming out.
No, Go-Go 13, Duke Togo, is a Gekiga hero in the truest sense, because there's a point at which he's supposed to kill a man. The man decides he doesn't want to end it that way, and he jumps out of a skyscraper window so that he can die in peace on his own. Duke Togo basically decides that that's not good enough. He's got to end this the Gekiga way. He shoots the guy on the way down.
So the guy dies from Duke Togo's, sniper rifle before he hits the ground.
I think he uses a revolver in that case.
I don't remember.
He shoots it right between the guy's going down. He's thinking it'll end this way. I'll miss my bet. Bang! Duke Togo is the Gekiga hero. I don't think they're going to kick us out, so we can't take any more questions right now. But if you're really interested in this stuff, if you take one of our flyers, if you email us, we will answer you. If you ask something we don't know, we have a lot of people we have access to who can give very detailed answers that we can pass on to you. You can also listen to our show. We've done a lot of shows about this sort of thing. It's totally free. And if you want to listen to more things like this, there's another show, kind of our sister show, called Anime World Order. We do anime as we go 4 nights a week. One night of the week is anime. Anime World Order goes once a week, but they just talk about
they don't go once a week anymore.
Well, no, but they delve a lot deeper into anime than we do, and they're fantastic. We're really good friends with them. Gerald, the infamous Gerald, is also on Anime World Order. There's also, if you want something more lighthearted, there's all sorts of radio shows about anime out there, like Fast Car.
You can go listen to like the manga cast. Ed Chavez does that. He knows a lot more than we do when it comes to manga and stuff.
Yeah, he's the manga expert.
Yeah.
We're the sanctuary experts.
Yeah, pretty much the reason we do this panel is not so much because it's part, we want to educate people, partially because we really like these manga more, typically more than some of the other manga that are being published, and we want to sort of create excitement for them. People will go buy them, and then maybe we'll get these things reprinted and whatnot.
Plus, at other cons like Otakon, we use it as a trick to get this room to fill up with 1 million people, and then, oh, by the way, we're talking about stuff that isn't just crazy.
And by the way, here's the trick.
So on that note, I'm afraid we're done. If you want to contact us, grab a flyer, and we will answer your questions by email. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the Year Anime Festival. And tomorrow, I'll be doing a panel called Know Your Creators, where we'll talk about all the creators of manga and anime that you should know about, all the